Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. This is Doris. This is episode 1 of Breaking Chains, From Surviving to Thriving, The Real Stories. And my first guest is someone that I admire tremendously and look up to, and his name is Chris Stretch. He's a therapist, among other things, and he's going to tell you a little bit of his story. Hey Chris, how are you doing?
Doris, I'm doing awesome. Thank you for having me on as your first guest.
This is very exciting.
And just so you know, I'm super proud of you and happy for you that you're doing this. This is just wonderful. I'm a big Doris fan. Anybody listening? So this is awesome, and I'm grateful to you and appreciate you having me on as your first guest. Thank you.
I appreciate you accepting. The way we'll do it is I'm going to ask maybe a question or two, and then I just want you to talk. We'll have a conversation and cry or laugh or whatever it comes down to.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're from California, born and raised.
Yes.
And you're in recovery?
Yes.
How long have you been in recovery?
So I just celebrated 9 years on Friday.
Awesome.
Yes. So I've been sober 9 years. It was just June 28th of 2010.
Okay.
Yes.
That's very exciting.
Yes.
So tell me, I don't know if this question is going to make sense or not, but do you feel like a victim of your life?
It's a great question, and I think it's best answered to say that sometimes I am and sometimes I'm not, and I think that really is, when I am a victim of my life, things get ugly pretty quickly, because being a victim is very disempowering. It's almost like it makes things that are difficult even more difficult because somehow I lack agency and capacity to deal with things. So yes, I fall into a trap of being feeling like I'm a victim of my life. More than that, I feel like I fall into the trap of being a victim of my mind. I have those in recovery know it as like the alcoholic or addict mind. This mind that I have that I think so many others really relate to is this mind that tells me things like I'm not good enough, and things that aren't necessarily my fault are my fault, and when things don't happen the way I want them to, somehow I'm the reason. And it's a challenging way to live when my mind is from get-go, from the morning I wake up, can tend to be this way, and
right.
And it's really easy to fall into the trap of being a victim of my mind. But then there are a lot of times when I realize that it's my choice as to whether or not I choose to be a victim of my mind, or I recognize that this is just how my mind thinks. My mind is not all of who I am. It's just a part of who I am. There's a deeper sense of myself. There's a higher level of consciousness and all these other things that we learn in recovery. And actually, when I'm not a victim of my mind, when my mind is just my mind and it's going to be the way it is and I just have to learn to deal with it, life's a lot better. There's a lot more hope. I'm a lot more optimistic. So I think, a lot of times it's as simple as, do I want to be a victim today or not?
Right.
And the more I choose that, no, I'm not going to be a victim today. I'm going to accept that I do have this mind that likes to, feed me lies a time or two, then things get better.
So tell some of the listeners who may be struggling with the fact that they're addicts or alcoholics, some of the things that you do in the morning before you even leave the house, before your feet hit the ground. Do you pray? Do you meditate? What do you do?
Well, can I go back a little bit to my story?
Sure.
So one of the things that I had such a difficult time with was being myself, and when I got to high school, I had high expectations for high school, and very quickly, I started having a major social anxiety, and I went from a big fish in a small pond to a small fish in a bigger pond, and it would just, and I couldn't get a sense of myself in relation to the outside world, and I felt like I wasn't connecting with anybody. I did have some bullying issues, but I now see that I didn't really stand up to people and let them know that, hey, I'm not to be messed with. So which is, I guess it's
You're a big guy. People just shouldn't mess with you anyway.
well, I don't know how big of a guy I was back then, but the point that I'm making is it's just that there was a lot of anxiety and not feeling comfortable in my own skin, probably from the time of, I would say that from the time of double days. So football starts a couple months before, or a month or so before school, and when double days, which is when the football starts, you have 2 practices a day. I just remember very quickly being like, I am not really accepted into this group of guys. It was 2 junior high schools meeting as one, and so I remember, and in high school I was focused on athletics, and I drank here and there, but I don't really remember drinking much. But I remember when I got to college. I remember very soon after I got to college, I was in a dorm, and I remember having a couple drinks. I probably 4 or 5. I mean, we played a lot of drinking games back then,
college
and
kids do.
and I remember feeling like at peace. Like I remember being in a hallway. I remember I was talking to a girl that had blonde hair, and I literally remember, wow, like I'm at ease. And so I wasn't like one of these drink all day every day kind of alcoholics, but almost any time I was interacting with people, I was drinking, and later on in my 20s using drugs.
Okay.
So so if you think of it this way, the solution I came up with for my anxiety, for my let's call it neurotic, insecure thinking, was to drink something or to take something to kind of take the edge off. So when I got to recovery, and people that remember me early on in meetings, they thought I was hysterical. If you know Anna, she's always, every time I see her, she's just like, gosh, you were hilarious early in recovery, because I for some reason I felt in these meetings that I could just talk about whatever was going on, and I would share the way my mind was thinking, and just completely it was alarming to me that once I really stopped drinking and using, it was like my mind is insane.
Yeah.
And I would share it, and like lo and behold, people would come up to me after the meetings and say, that's how my mind operates too, and there was like this. It's like these all addicts, alcoholics, like we share the same brain. Like there's this big addict brain in the sky, and we are all connected in some way, and that's how we relate to each other. So, in leading to answer your question, is that so that's what I wake up with every morning. I've been in therapy. I've tried pharmaceutical stuff that I'm not currently taking anything. I tried a lot of different things to kind of go at it, like on the mental health perspective. And therapy is wonderful. I'm a therapist. I'm currently in therapy. It really is great. But I find the single thing that is the most important is what happens when I first open my eyes in the morning. And my current sponsor that I love dearly is one of my best friends. We talk a lot about resetting in the morning, almost treating our dis-ease, like dis-ease, this bondage of self, that they call it in the literature. And the way that I do it is pretty quickly I get to a place where I can meditate. I get a cup of coffee. I either read a little bit of something spiritual, or sometimes I'll just say a prayer, or I'll have like an intention. So the reading part of it is pretty small, but I want to have some intention, and then I try to get quiet for, depending on how much time I have, as much as 20 minutes if I can. 10 to 15 minutes is good. Just to be able to be more the observer of my mind, to really connect to the fact that my mind's just going to go. It's going to go all day, and I just better get ready for this churning and burning, and I don't have to get hooked into that every second. So that's what I do in the morning, and days go much, much better. And one of the things, my next, let's just say, objective is, because I've recently gone on I went on a retreat for this nonprofit I was speaking with, and sometimes I'll step out of this routine that I have in the South Bay community, and for some reason I get in vacation mode, and I think, you know what, Chris, we're going to sleep in, and we're going to, and I'm telling you, this retreat reminded me so clearly that it does not matter whether I'm in Hermosa Beach or we were in Petaluma. I need to get my butt up about an hour before I do anything, and I need to get quiet, and I need to recenter and refocus and have some sort of intention for the day, or else it gets ugly pretty quickly. I mean, I was around about 60 people that I didn't know, and there was a lot of, let's just say, delusional thinking going on. I was pretty convinced certain people didn't like me, 2 of which, by the end of the darn thing, really had a lot of great things to say about me. So it just goes to show that when I don't treat my thinking with some sort of spiritual practice, it gets pretty ugly pretty quick.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. And now I'm going to have more questions probably at the end, but I want you to talk about your beginnings and where you're at now with your recovery and what you do with your career, because I know you work with kids and teenagers and families and coaches as well.
Yes.
As well as being a therapist. So just start wherever you're comfortable, from a baby or as a teenager or wherever you remember or wherever you're comfortable starting, to let us know about what's been going on in your life and up until now.
Well, let's see here. Where should I start? So growing up, I was a really good athlete, and like I said earlier, I felt like I was a big fish. I didn't realize it was a small pond, and I was really good at especially baseball, and later on football. I was a quarterback in my high school football team, and I think, I'd be 19, showing my age here. 1994, I was, one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks yardage wise in Orange County. So I ended up having a pretty good season. I got recruited to play football at UC Davis, and I ended up playing baseball. And but back to what I was saying earlier, there was, my life was pretty good. I have 2 older sisters, a younger brother. I have parents that are good parents, and and somewhere along the lines, when I got to high school, it became very challenging. Very difficult for me to deal with what was going on in my life. And so high school was pretty much let's just say an anxiety-ridden period of my life.
Okay.
I just had a tough time. And so as I spoke about, early on in college, I started partying. And, I think, and this is, right now I do a lot of public speaking. I do the 2 areas that I speak in are performance, like, competitive performance, athletes, and mental health stuff, typically with like drug awareness, things like that in schools.
Okay.
Authenticity and things like that. So those are the 2 areas that I was speaking in. And one of the things I say in my talk was that really I think a lot of our direction in life has to do with our identity. How do we develop our identity? And just to give you an example, when I shortly after I told that story where I had some drinks and I felt at calm and that my mind was no longer churning and burning about how, like people don't like me and they're out to get me and all these kind of delusional thoughts that I'd had like probably since age 14.
Okay.
Soon after that happened, we had a big night. I got really wasted and woke up. I remember being hungover, and we walked to the dining commons. Dining commons is what we called the area where we ate in college in the freshman dorms. And I love the dining commons because it's all you can eat. And at 18 years old, I'm just chowing down, man. It was awesome. And
kind of like a cafeteria?
Yeah, kind of cafeteria. Yeah, so I remember going into this, the dining commons to get some dirty grub. That's what we called our hangover food, right? And I remember being really hungover, and I remember coming up on this table with about 10, 8 to 10 people, and I remember all of them, like in unison, almost going, "Oh, stretch, fucking stretch." If I can swear, I hope I can.
Fine.
But yeah, and I'm like, what? And sure enough, like all of them had some story about something I did the night before that was super funny or super, like entertaining. I was big on. My shtick was always like, saying, really, let's just say, awkward things to girls when I meet them. One of my friends had this quote board, and he would always like write quotes that I would say when I was drunk, and they were all really funny, and a lot of them had to do with talking to girls. I don't know if you remember Carmen Electra, but I walked up to a girl at a party. And and she was a freshman, and I was a senior. That's kind of crazy. 23-year-old talking to an 18-year-old. And my first lines were, "You look so much like Carmen Electra," And of course, my friends heard that, jotted it down, and next thing you know, on my quote board the next day, another quote from me. So I developed this identity that at the time I loved. It was like I've arrived. I have friends. People like me. And I was the guy that people wanted to party with, and it felt great. But the problem is that my entire identity revolved around being inebriated. I mean,
Right.
the whole thing. And I didn't drink every night, but I mean, in college, we're drinking Wednesday night through Saturday night. So, I mean, the only time I was sober was Sunday night through Tuesday night. And so that kind of set me on a path. And it just, in all honesty, it was really toxic for me to have the identity that I was the most comfortable with, the one that I felt the most appreciated, where I felt the most appreciated, where people liked me, was when I was drinking.
Okay.
So lo and behold, I mean, after that, most of my social interactions were at a bar or over beers or over drinks and things like that. And I now look at that as a really terrible place for me to be, because, in my 20s, I think for most of the time I thought I was doing okay. But I really wasn't interacting with people on a social level that often sober, like without being inebriated. So I had a lot of friends that now I look back and they're more like acquaintances, some of which I've reconnected with, and they are actually very close friends, but most of which
Just drinking buddies.
Just drinking buddies,
Yeah.
So, when I was after college, I had a really good senior year. So, rewind. So I played baseball and football my first year in college, and then I decided, after getting hit a few times playing college football, I got crushed a few times. I'm going to play baseball, and I played baseball. And my senior year, I had a really, really good year. I mean, I was out of my mind. I did really, really well, and I signed a minor league contract. It was just an independent contract, but a lot of times that leads to getting signed by a big league team.
Yeah.
So I did that, and once again I was hit with a really tough time, because I went from college, where I'm surrounded by people that I knew I redshirted, so that was 5 years in college, and I have all these guys around.
Redshirted?
So when you redshirt, it's basically like a year you take off and you practice with the team.
Okay.
But you don't use up a year of eligibility. So you can go. So your fifth year is your fourth year of eligibility. So I was there 5 years, and there's I think there was 8 of us that had been, first year to fifth year together. Okay. So I had all these guys surrounding me, and we had so much fun. I mean, it was unbelievable. The group of guys we had. And then I signed on to this minor league baseball team. Minor league baseball is a lot different. I mean, everybody's out for themselves. Everybody's trying to get signed to another team, and there wasn't the camaraderie. And I remember at that point in time, I really struggled emotionally with that. Once again, I have this theme. I start going back into this place where I feel just very insecure, and I feel like I have a hard time connecting with people, hard time trusting people, feel like people, and when you're in a guy's locker room, and I never really jived with the guy's locker room. I was never good at that's why I drank. Because I could drink myself into a place where I was like one of the guys. You cut me below the belt, and I'll put one below your belt, and I could do that after 6 or 7 beers, but totally sober, man, I'm a sensitive dude. I am sensitive. I take everything personal. It's very hard for me to exist in that locker room culture. And so I remember minor league baseball was very, very difficult. And trying to fit in, I said a couple things that were kind of cocky, and one of the guys just basically let me have it because of that. And I don't think I ever recovered from that. I really thought that all these guys were out to get me, and they weren't. And so that was minor league baseball. And then I got a job, and I moved to Philadelphia for a year for training. It was a chemical sales job. And then I moved to Nashville, Tennessee for 3 years for my first sales territory, which was a lot of fun. I mean, Nashville's a huge party town. I mean,
I used to live there, so I know.
Oh, yeah, and the bars are open until 3.
Yeah.
So that means you get 1 extra hour of drinking.
Yeah.
I think that 3 years of 1 extra hour of drinking, and it took years off my life. I mean, that was unbelievable. But I had a good group of guys, a solid core of guys, and I still keep in touch with a few of them today. So about 2 years in, and this is so interesting, right? Because after this happened, I found out that a lot of people were doing cocaine around me, but because I didn't look like the cocaine type, I guess, nobody included me in that.
Okay, what does the cocaine type look like?
I don't know, but I'll just tell you the story, and then maybe you can help me, So I'm at this after-hours place, and so Nashville, not only could you drink till 3, if you got beer or alcohol prior to the closing time at 3, you could take them into after-hours places. And so there's the after-hours places where people just bring in their own alcohol, and you can hang out till 6 in the morning. They put it back behind the bar on ice. And so we were at this after hours place, and this blonde girl, she was cute. I was flirting with her, and so she says, "Do you want to go in the bathroom?" And I was thinking we were gonna hook up. And so I'm like, dude, I've never had this happen before. I'm like, of course, I was 25 at the time, and I'm like, this is super sweet. And I get in the bathroom stall, and she pulls out this bag of white stuff, pulls out a key, and puts a little bit on the key, puts it, snorts it in her nose, and then just scoops one out and gives it to me, I just followed suit, and I'm like, all right, and I did that, and literally, I don't know, 90 seconds later, I felt this, I thought drinking was, I thought being drunk was a wonderful feeling.
Yeah.
Or inebriated, Actually, I didn't like being drunk. I like that zone right
Just
before
the
you get
buzz.
drunk, that place. Yeah. This took it to another level. It felt like I was center stage at, the Forum, and I am on it. This is good. It felt like this, it was like a click, click, I'm good, I'm rocking, I'm awesome, things are wonderful, and whatever problems I had were not even in the purview. It was like life is good. And I remember, so here's what happened. So I remember there was a girl named Shelby that I knew, and we were buddies. We'd hang out, and so it was back in flip phones, right? Because I don't think we were texting back then. Maybe we were. It was right about when texting started happening, and I remember calling her, and I left a message. And did I leave a message? I think I left a message, and I'm like, I just did cocaine, and this is great. I don't know if you ever done that. She calls me back, and she says, "Where are you?" And I say, "Here's where I am." She goes, "I'll be there right away." She shows up right away, and next thing you know, me and her are doing cocaine together.
Okay.
She'd been doing it the whole time. I knew her a year and a half. She'd been doing it the whole time, but somehow, I don't know what the whole coke, person looks like. But
yeah.
I obviously didn't look at the part, because she never even asked. Never said, "Hey, do you do this?" And then in our group, which was, the nuclear group was probably 5 or 6 people, and then, spread out from that was 20 or 30 people that we would hang out with in Nashville. Not too many people in my nuclear group were doing it, but all these acquaintances, I found out they're all doing it. Not all of them, but so I was like, oh my God, everybody, and then I talked to some people from college, found out people down the hall in my fraternity house when I lived there my sophomore year were high on coke all the time. I didn't know about it. After I did it, I found out that all these people were doing cocaine, and I just wasn't privy to the information. And so I guess that's a good thing, because I started doing that at 25-ish. I think I was 25, and around about 31, I was a completely addicted cocaine addict. So anyways, so to continue on, so I left that career and I got into medical device sales, which is incredibly high stress. If anyone's ever done it or heard of anybody that does it, it's incredibly high stress. The quotas are high, it's cutthroat, and it was way bigger than I was. And so this thing that I was doing on weekends, and I remember I tried to do it every other weekend. I was doing that managing thing, and it went from once a month to, well, initially it went from special occasions, and then once a month, and then it's every other weekend. And then when I got this medical device job, it became a lot.
You're talking about the coke.
The cocaine,
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And actually, kind of embarrassing to admit, but this is also true. What I was at the time, so somewhere in there, I decided that I want to be diagnosed with ADHD, and I want some ADHD meds, because I knew that they were stimulant based, and I had really liked stimulants. I loved coke, so why not try out these ADHD meds? So I got diagnosed with ADHD, and I took some ADHD meds, Ritalin type meds, and they were good, and they worked as they're supposed to. But then I decided, well, if I'm drinking and I want to drink more, I'll pop one of them. And then went from that to now, if I don't have cocaine, I'll snort them. So I literally, within a year of taking my Ritalin meds as prescribed, I went from as prescribed to taking extra so I could drink more, to now I'm snorting them. So in actuality, what I did when I was doing my medical device stuff was I was buying excess amounts of ADHD medications from, I don't know where it was being shipped from. It was online, it was coming from India or whatever.
Wow.
And I was literally cutting that up in hospital parking lots, cutting it up, snorting it up so I could go in and perform this sales job that I absolutely was unqualified for, mental health wise. Was just, I mean, it was like going into a battleground, because you're a rep and you go into a hospital and you got to find out who the surgeon is and what the procedure they're doing is. And I mean, I was going into dressing rooms, and I mean, I was literally selling to doctors while they're like dressing, like in their underwear, being like, "Hey doc, can I show you my orthopedic screws?" Because I was selling orthopedics.
Okay.
So, and then I went into a startup company, which was more wound care, which I was selling a living cellular matrix product that went into wounds, which is really great. But that was even a step up, because it was a startup, and I got stock options, which didn't come to fruition because they kicked my my quotas up, and I hit my quota one month, and I'll never forget. I hit my quota in May of, this is 2009, and this was like like a 5-figure bonus for hitting my quota, and I was so stretched thin and worn out from no sleep and snorting Ritalin all day every day during the week, and then of course because of that I had to have Xanax when I got done with work, and of course drink a few glasses of wine, bring me down, and then I mean it was literally I was literally Ritalin, snorting Ritalin all day long, taking a Xanax, after I got off work, drinking at least 2 or 3 glasses of wine or drinks, and then maybe one more Xanax, and then I was taking Ambien to go to sleep. That was the last year of my life before I got sober, and so it was really and as I'm doing this, I'm starting to think to myself, like, there's this voice in the back of my head, like, dude, you can't do this forever. Like, this is no bueno. I mean, this is not good. And so so that May, I remember I got I hit my mark the last day of the month. I hit that sales quota, and I remember I started crying, because it was like the money didn't matter. It was like the torment that it took to get to this point where I'm succeeding where I need to be succeeding in this job is not, like, the money is not worth it.
Right. Yeah.
And I proceeded to blow it out that weekend and got ripped and drunk, and I think I partied into the next Monday or Tuesday, and I never recovered, and then it was a monthly quota, and I didn't hit my quota the next month, and I hit my quota the next month, and they eventually said, you're laid off. They fired me. They gave me. They were nice enough to give me, I think, 6 weeks severance or whatever. But so I was done, and so at this point in time, now for me, failure is not an option. I mean, I when we do these inventories in 12-step stuff, we write down some things that we feel about.
Explain what inventory is for those who don't know.
Okay, if you'd like me to do that. Okay, so the 4th step is a personal inventory of faults and grievances and resentments, and it's really, you're just writing out, like, it's like a stock keeping, like you're just checking in with, like, all the different things owning up to all the different things where you've gone wrong. Most of it falls in the category of resentment, but it can be just faults, resentments, fears, sex, and that's kind of the 4 main ones. And then so one of the things that I wrote down was the fear of failure. So I'm early in recovery, and what I wrote down was I fear failure more than I fear death. So that's how deep my fear of failure was, that I would rather die than fail, which so rewind back, then it made sense why when I got laid off I crumbled. I mean, I crumbled. Talk about being a victim. I mean, I was a total victim, and it was, I mean, I look back, it was so terrible. I didn't have any foundation within myself. I didn't have any foundation in terms of any community. The only friends that I had in an environment that I couldn't exist in anymore. I knew that pretty quickly. Like a good example would be, I remember in this. So I get laid off, and I think. I get laid off, and I went to Europe. Not a side story. I went to Europe for 3 weeks with my girlfriend at the time, and we didn't get along. So
fun times in Europe.
Yeah, we didn't get along. So when we got back, we broke up, and so it was kind of like I was like I thought maybe I'll turn over a new leaf one day, and I went out one day. It was a Sunday because I remember it was football. and I started drinking, and next thing you know, within an hour I had a bag of cocaine, and then I was, back at, my place. And that was the anybody that's done this stuff, it's just so perplexing. Like, it starts out socially, and then it's just like, man, I just want alcohol, drugs, and my room. I don't want to be social anymore. It's like, I just want to get as fucked up and as high as I can.
Yeah.
And I think probably my neurosis, my insecurity thought, and I don't want people to judge me, so I'm going to go in my room. And I did that. I guess it would start in like November of 2009. I did that very, very early November. And I did that all the way through November. And, that month of, I remember like 2 weeks into that, I had a friend who was like, hey man, you're going to come to my birthday, I have a birthday thing. And he's still a really good friend to this day. And I'm like, yeah, dude, I'll go. And I show up to his birthday party. It was at a bar, like everything was. Have a couple beers, a couple drinks. And then I remember seeing this guy who had, I knew sold stuff.
Okay.
And I remember going, hey man, can I get some stuff? Now, keep in mind, going there, I just wanted to be social. I wanted to hang out. I wanted to have a couple drinks. I hadn't seen my friends in a while, especially this guy who I still think of as a very good friend. It didn't matter. Once I started drinking, it was like it was on. This guy had some cocaine, he had some blow. I was probably, $150 for what I wanted. Grab that, and I was gone.
Yeah.
I didn't spend. I think I spent maybe 23 minutes total at that party, and and I live in the South Bay in Hermosa Beach, and everything's walking distance. And I just went out the door, walked home, and probably spent the next 3 days, in my room, with vodka and cocaine.
Yeah.
And wow, like I look back on that, and so it was, the end of it was basically I had this, this bender, and I got up from the bender, and I remember thinking like, okay, so then it was Huntington Beach Boat Parade. So my family, my sister's ex-husband, now ex-husband, but back then I think they were engaged or something, had a boat in Huntington, and every Christmas we would do this Huntington Boat Parade.
Okay.
And it was really awesome. We'd all get together as a family, and my family likes to have a good time, and we'd do this Huntington Boat Parade where I think maybe 1 year until we actually they dressed the boat up to be a part of the parade, but usually we just go and watch.
Okay.
And I remember my family's worried about me. They know I'm unemployed. They're not really hearing from me. I remember my sisters, my mom. I remember them. Are you going to be there? Are you going to be there? Are you going to be there? And I said, sure. And I thought to myself, I'm like, okay, just like that party. I'm like, I'm going to go. And by the way, I remember I took a yoga class between the last time that happened and this time, because I was going to therapy, and this therapist was trying to get me into this, try something different, go to yoga. And by the way, that yoga class was a full panic attack. And I made it through the entire thing because I didn't want people to think, you loser dude can't make it through a friggin' yoga class, right?
Right.
But it was awful. I was like full anxiety, full panic, doing these awfully terrible, stupid, idiotic poses. I do yoga now today all the time. And judging the hell out of myself, judging everybody else. And so that was my yoga class. But I remember showing up to this boat parade, and I remember one of my brother's friends was there, and I was telling her about how, I'm getting spiritual. I took a yoga class. Like, even though I hated it,
right.
I had to tell her how wonderfully spiritual I was going to become. And I read the book The Four Agreements too while I was still, which I recommend that to anybody.
What is that about?
The Four Agreements. It's a Don Miguel Ruiz. It's a very simple 100-page self-help book. I recommend it to anybody. The Four Agreements are pretty simple things that we can do to live a better life.
Okay.
And so I read that, and I went to yoga class, so I thought that I'm spiritual and I'm changing. And I remember telling this to I think my brother's friend's name was Lauren. I think it was Lauren. And that was before I took a drink. So then I went into the boat, and I just had a drink. And I'm not kidding you. I had a drink, and then I said, screw this shit. Right after that alcohol went in my body, right? And I poured a shot, and I took a shot, and then I went over to this big bong, and I took a big old bong rip.
Wow.
It happened like that. And I was literally, the entire time I was driving to that thing, I was saying, you know what, like, I gotta chill here. Like, I can't keep having these, because, these 2 and 3 day benders took 3 to 4 days to get out of.
Right.
I mean, it took a good 2 days before I felt normal physically, and then mentally, my just scatterbrained, OCD, ADHD, crazy for another 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
So it was just like, intellectually, on like my upstairs executive brain was just like, dude, this doesn't work anymore. We got to chill this out. But anybody that knows anything about addiction knows that we're not operating from our upstairs brain. We're operating from this reptilian, primitive brain, where our lower, survival brain saying, no, screw this. We need our drink. We need our drug.
Right.
So that was the last straw. I did it all night, and it was just an ugly, ugly deal. And so that was, and then I end up at a family's house, like this place that we have as a family. And I remember I drank every drop of alcohol in the place. I mean, I was kind of blacked out, but I know I did that. And then, the next day was, comatose, hungover, terrible, awful. I think by the end of the day, I got in my car and I drove home. And then the next day was December 12th, 2009. Well, the next day was December 13th of 2009. And I called an AA office. The therapist I'd been talking to had been planning to see that maybe I could try that out, and I called and they said there was a couple meetings, and there was a mixed meeting and a men's meeting, and I chose the men's meeting, and that was it. I was in a meeting. So, so my experience with AA, or 12, I guess we'll just call it AA, is, like I said earlier, there's something off with me as a, I kind of look like an athlete. I present like an athlete. I'm type A. I'm very heterosexual. Not like there's anything wrong with bisexual or homosexuality, so I present a certain way. But I have always, even when I was younger, but I especially experienced this once adolescence kicked in.
Okay.
Been incredibly sensitive and emotional, and I mean, I cry at the drop of a hat. And really, I think when that started happening to me, when I started feeling this incredible insecurity, and the constant theme was, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? And I would beat myself to shreds because I'm watching guys cut each other up, and someone would say something to me, and I'm watching them, and it's rolling off their back, and I am so offended and so hurt, and trying to keep a smiley face and play along with it, which obviously when I was drinking, I could roll with it. I didn't have to deal with that.
Right.
So my first AA meeting was unbelievable. It was, I can't even describe it because it was a men's meeting, and thank God I went to a men's meeting, and there were guys in there sharing that same stuff.
Okay.
That sensitivity, that one guy shared that he's still resented. He's a 50-year-old guy, 50-ish guy. He's successful guy too, and he still resented this kid in Little League that could throw a curveball because he couldn't. These were the things that I was experiencing. I was still super resentful at some of the kids in high school, and I'm 31, 32 years old at the time. But so ashamed. Like, why am I still bothered by things from my childhood? Why? Why am I still bothered,
Right.
And I would beat myself to shreds, and I still do it today, but I'm better. And I'm in this group, this meeting, and these guys are sharing getting vulnerable about what it's like to live with what I now know to be this alcoholic addict I like dis-ease. This is a disease. It is a disease, I guess, but I like to think of it as a dis-ease because it's constant unease.
Right.
It's constant unease. Emotional turmoil. And I'm sitting with these guys, and they're all well-to-do in their lives. They're doing fine. Most of them had fairly long-term sobriety, and they're sharing things that I was thinking about and absolutely ashamed of myself, beyond ashamed of myself for thinking that way, for feeling that way. I thought that I thought I wasn't a man. I look like a man, but I'm not a man. I'm a boy. I'm a child. I'm an alien. I don't know what I am.
Right.
And so I was hooked from day one. Now, that didn't mean life was great. As you know, my sobriety date is June 28th, not December 13th.
Right.
I had a surgery and I abused the pills. I had to restart there. And, that Ambien was the last one to go. I was making sure the doctor dosed me with Ambien, and I would, go to meetings and say I was sober, and I'd pop a couple, chew them every night, smoke cigarettes, get just a
Smoker, huh?
yeah. I would smoke cigarettes, and I would get like a 20-minute little little intoxicated high feeling, and then I would of course pass out because that's what Ambien does to you, and I thought that I was sober because it was doctor prescribed.
Okay.
And I'll never remember Diane, and you know Diane. She is in similar circles. Older Diane, blonde hair.
Oh yeah. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was at a meeting around about. I don't know. That's probably about. I'm guessing it was either June 27th or June 26th of 2010, and I think it was either her birthday or something. And she said so emphatically, I felt like she was talking directly to me and in my core, and she said, I take nothing from the neck up. It's just me, but I know that if I take anything, now there's nothing against pharmaceutical stuff. That is like, hey, if you got the mental health stuff, you got to be honest with yourself. Got to work. For me, I got to be honest with myself. Work very closely with my physician.
Right.
So there, SSRIs and antidepressants, I guess. But what she was saying was basically like, you got to be honest with yourself, and if you don't need it, you don't need it, and it's not real sobriety. And I felt like she said it in a way that just hit me. And so I remember I called my friend Billy. Billy's Billy B. He's still one of my very, very good friends. And we took a walk on the beach, and I just said, man, I think the jig is up. I think I got to shut this stuff down. And because I don't think I was experiencing the full benefits of recovery when I was doing that.
Okay.
So I shut that down to June 28, 2010, my sobriety date, and I didn't sleep for a good 5 days.
5 days?
I had been taking Ambien to fall asleep for, 32, probably 5 years. And I felt great. And this is what I tell everybody. I had my integrity back. I would lay down and I'd say, you know what, I don't care that I'm not. It just felt so good when I finally surrendered that I am not going to take anything from the neck up anymore.
Yeah.
Not anything that's mind altering.
Right.
And by the way, in sobriety, I've tried antidepressants, and
Okay.
I've been on them, I've been off them, I no longer am on them. I tried them. Some people need that stuff, and I found that it didn't really work for me. So side note, but it felt so good to be sober,
Right.
completely. That and it was one of the things that we talk about. And this isn't just recovery. I think this is mental health in general. We're as sick as our secrets. So I wasn't telling anybody about that.
Yeah.
So when I shared that stuff, and then I share it, and then a lot of people say, hey, well, this is what happened to me, and this is what I was doing, and next thing you know, everything's open, and we're vulnerable, and we're connecting. It just felt like, awesome.
Yeah.
So even though I wasn't sleeping, I was like going to the gym and having great workouts. I remember back then I was running a lot of the Strand, and it was just like, I just felt so like I felt like I had my integrity back again.
Yeah.
I wasn't lying to anybody anymore. I wasn't, cutting corners, So yeah, so that started my sobriety then. So can I share with you my sobriety birthday
Absolutely.
this year?
Yes.
So
Yeah, I was supposed to give you a cake yesterday.
well, you're gonna give me a cake. Let's see, this Friday. You're gonna be there Friday.
I can be. Normally, no, because of my work, but I can definitely be there.
Okay, Doris, you're giving me a cake on Friday.
All right.
Love it. So, so wow, this is super special. So right now, I guess I'll just continue my story and then get into
Okay.
where I'm at. So I ended up in recovery. I could not go back to my current job. I could not go back. I had this
sales job?
Yeah, I had this I have an amazing sales resume. Amazing. It looks good, and I don't. I'm good at interviewing. I guess I'm good at talking and communicating, but I am not good at sales. I get in my own way constantly. I mean,
Okay.
when I wake up in the morning, doing sales is like, it's like being expected to play Beethoven on the piano and only being able to do chopsticks.
Okay.
And I'm surrounded by people, and I feel like they're like Mozart. They know how to network and prospect and all this stuff. And they're doing it, and they're growing, and I felt like I couldn't grow, and I did not know what I was doing.
Yeah.
And it was, but yet, I continued to get these jobs that I felt like I didn't really deserve, whatever. And so I couldn't go back to that, A, because I didn't like it, B, because the last time I did it, I was snorting stuff all day long,
Right.
while I was doing it. So I was like, what the hell am I going to do? And actually, truth be told, the first year of sobriety, I tried it out. I got a recruiting job, didn't like that. I got back into sales. That lasted literally 3 weeks. And my sponsor basically told me, if you don't resign, you're going to go crazy. And he was right, which is so odd because I thought that this successful guy would not tell me to voluntarily be unemployed. But when people have program, they know what's really going on.
Yeah.
And he could connect me to the fact that money is not important when I'm going insane, and I was.
Absolutely.
So what am I going to do next? So I end up getting this feedback from people in the rooms. It felt like that you're really good at talking about this thing we have. You're really good at talking about what goes on in your mind, and I relate. And so I got this idea to be like a drug and alcohol counselor. So I went back to school to be a drug and alcohol counselor at Cal State Dominguez Hills, and then I thought, and then what happened was I went. I got this idea with this other new guy that was in recovery to go to Haiti for a relief mission after the 2010 earthquake, which was one of the best things I've ever done. And so I went down to Haiti for 7 days, and it was just so amazing. And so while I'm there, I got this idea, well, maybe I can be a therapist, and then actually, because I like this, maybe I could be a social worker. So the whole thing around being a social worker, if you get your MSW, you can become a licensed clinical social worker, which is really almost comparable. It's comparable basically to a marriage and family therapist.
Okay.
So I thought, well, maybe I can get into a social work program, so I could do social work kind of like I was doing in Haiti, which was amazing, or I could be a therapist. So I applied to Cal State Dominguez Hills, and this is like really lucky stuff. I am lucky because I had a 2.14 undergrad GPA. I was not doing much studying. There were guys on my baseball team that would ask me if I even went to school there because they never saw me on campus just to practice.
Wow.
Yeah. So I majored in alcohol, girls, and baseball. I mean, that was
alcohol, girls, and baseball.
And all these public schools had you could apply, but they had GPA requirements, and these are like think Long Beach State 2.5 GPA requirement.
Okay.
But Cal State Dominguez Hills, they had the way they conducted the admissions was they took the personal statement into consideration.
Okay.
So they didn't have a minimum GPA.
Okay.
It was a 9-page personal statement, and I put my heart and soul into the personal statement. When I showed up and turned my application in, I stood in the lobby, making sure I could shake hands with as many professors as I could, and lo and behold, I got in. And I mean, how I got in to a master's program with a 2.14 undergrad GPA. Not only that, two of the required classes were child development class, which I had to take at a junior college, which was really important because I love that child development class. And the idea of going back to school was not good. And I love that child development class. And I needed a statistics class. Well, I did take statistics in college. I got a D-.
Okay. So
it had 2 classes prerequisite, and you had to write down what the class, where you took it and when, and the grade. So on my application, statistics D-. So I have a 2.14 GPA. The required class of statistics I have to take, I got a D-, not a D, a D-. And I send it in, and thank God that by then I was just like, my heart and soul is in this, and I'm gonna throw it into my personal statement, and I just dialed it in, and I got in.
That's awesome.
So I completed those drug and alcohol courses. It was a 9-course deal. I got a certification from Cal State Dominguez Hills. I started my master's program.
Okay.
And so I did full time. So not only did I do my master's program, but I was, I needed to make ends meet, and I wasn't no longer making like the 6-figure income. So I had to coach boys baseball at a local club for a local. Basically like a private, but they basically run teams out of this place called Beach Cities baseball. So I coached from 1 team to 2 teams to 3 teams. Okay. I had at one point in time I had 45 boys I was responsible for, running this baseball stuff. Wow. And then I had to get a job at a restaurant. I worked at the Salt Creek Grill with Wendy and some other people, and I just 2 years. I went in and I got my master's, and then you need your hours after that. I found a place in Long Beach. I did that. So for about 3 years, I was in Long Beach.
Okay.
And in Long Beach, the reason why I'm telling you the story is A, because it happened, and B, because what I started realizing is I love kids.
Okay.
That was amazing. Coaching those kids for those, it was basically 3 years. It was 2 years when I was in school, and the year when I was doing intern work in Long Beach. Was phenomenal. I still see some of those kids in the community today. They are, love those kids, and I got a great experience with working with kids, and I was, I don't know. There's something about me. I was all about attitude and character. I didn't care about winning, and which was great because we lost almost every game. There's a lot of kids in the program, so we had to stretch the talent out, and so we didn't really win a lot. And so that was when I started to think, I love kids. I love being around kids. I love working with kids. And then I go into this Long Beach facility, and I end up, within a month or two, I have all teenagers. I mean, I ran a couple of the groups when I was just building up my caseload.
Okay.
And within 2 months, I had a lot of these kids I really connected with. And next thing you know, like, of the 30 or so clients I'm seeing a week, like more than half are teenagers.
Okay.
And I didn't plan on that. I thought, like, I'll probably just see people like me, right? I mean,
right.
So I'm starting to really, and then what happened was I started to really realize that that sports is a big part of my life, and a lot of these issues that we're talking about, they affected me on the field. I mean, the fear of failure just killed me when I was playing sports.
Right.
Killed me, overwhelmed me to the point where sometimes I wanted to literally take a shovel out, dig a hole, and hide underneath it while I'm on the field. That's how terrified I was a lot of times when I was playing athletics. So I wanted to have an impact there. So I volunteered at, and I will eventually get to my 9th birthday, but it's really important that I tell you the whole story.
Okay.
So I volunteer in Miracosta, the local high school here, and I start working with the baseball team, and I really connect well with Coach Olson, who was the previous coach. And he, I did a talk for him. He liked the talk, and then he invited me to volunteer for them. And then he had these kids camps, and they're basically, I don't know, a couple during the summer, maybe one at Christmas. And so I started volunteering at the kids camps, and I started developing this protocol for how I do it. And these kids would come to my station. It'd be the mental skills station.
Okay.
And by the end of it, they'd have all these different tools. Tools like refocusing and conscious breathing and learning how to make a plan before the pitch. All these different tools. And at the very end of the camp, we'd do this exhibition thing where I talked to the parents about what I taught the kids, and I'd ask the questions, and you'd have 60 kids repeating back the answers, right? So, like, one of them be like, to control my performance, I got to learn to be what? And you'd have 60 kids go, be under control. How do I do it? And 60 kids, conscious breathing. And then all right, someone explain what conscious breathing is, and then you have 7, 8-year-old kids saying, like, paying attention to your breath and calming yourself down. Being a thermostat, not a thermometer. I love that analogy, right? Being a thermostat, staying under control. And all these kids learn that. So one of the kids that was at that camp, one of the mothers, saw me talk.
Okay.
And so, I don't know, gosh, that was probably 3 years ago. And so she needed someone to work with her 10-year-old son. And so I saw him, clinically. And but then I'd still see him around the community. And, long story short, a lot of his issues were due to, some of the family dynamic struggles.
Right.
And so after he saw me, the parents got help from my mentor, Dr. Berger.
Okay.
And turns out they had some alcoholism stuff going on. So they both get sober. And they are rock stars in this sober community. I mean, they're in it. I guess this would be their 4th month, I think. Rock stars.
Nice.
And so, they have 3 kids. So, love the 10-year-old. They also have an 8-year-old. Got to know him really well. Love this kid. And then they have this cute as heck little 5-year-old. And I see him around. I got to know them really well. And then there's another woman in the program in our meeting that has an 11-year-old. And he's at all my camps, and I've gone to the park with him and played catch with him, and I just love this kid. So that sets the stage. So I've gotten to know these people really well, and we've shared in recovery. And they asked the question, who's got a birthday? I said, 9-year birthday. So I get up there, and so for those of you who don't know, you get up there. You usually choose someone that's important to you to give you a cake, and so I chose a couple people, and So I just turn around, and as I'm about to say, I'm Chris, I'm an alcoholic, and they're going to start, and they light the candle, and next thing you know, those 4 boys come in with balloons in their hands.
Oh my goodness! How
Oh my God.
exciting.
Oh my God, it was.
I'm gonna cry.
I
That's
mean,
exciting.
It was unbelievable. It was I lost it. I couldn't stop crying.
You're tearing up right now.
Yeah, I was so amazed. And these kids got up at 6:45 in the morning, and they came in, and they had these big smiles on their faces and these balloons, and it was. I will never forget that moment, and everybody's singing "Happy Birthday," and I'm like in this emotional shock, because I couldn't stop crying, and I'm looking at these boys, and they're smiling, and I'm like, this means so much to me, And they got done and doing that, and then the dad, he's like, all right, we're going to go get some donuts, wish, Coach Stretch, they all call me Coach Stretch, a happy birthday, and they all gave me hugs, and then they left, and I literally, it took me, I don't know, maybe 60 seconds to even start talking. I was so overwhelmed with tears. I mean, isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
I mean, if I hadn't cried the last 4 days about it, I'd probably be bawling right now. I mean, it just one of the most kind and wonderful things that anyone has done for me, and that is recovery. That's what we do for each other in recovery. And so that was my 9th birthday last Friday. So, but you take for those of you that don't know, you take a birthday cake at every meeting that you go to. So I have yet to go to the 9:30 meeting. So you're going to give me a cake at that meeting.
Yes.
So that's where I'm at today. What else could I talk about that would be of interest to you?
So someone asked me what are your thoughts? Have you ever heard of Smart Recovery?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on Smart Recovery? Explain what it is and what you believe.
I think, smart recovery, from my understanding about smart recovery, it's really more based on behavior modification and less based on spirituality.
Okay.
But let's face it, there are some critical components to treating addiction or getting or recovering an addiction. Number one is community. Very, very rarely do people... therapy is a very important part of recovery, but very rarely does someone get sober and experience the promises of recovery just by going in a one-on-one session, maybe with a therapist and a psychiatrist. So, the fact that smart recovery is a community is a great thing. Some people go to a church, great thing. Some people go more the Buddhist route. There's a guy named Noah Levine. I think he started in AA, and he started... he wrote a book, I think it's called Dharma Punks is his book, and then he has an organization called Against the Stream.
Okay.
And it's basically a Buddhist Dharma Punks, right? Dharma is Buddhism, and punks is like young, nut jobs, and so that's that. So but the thing, there has to be a community. Like, there is a saying that I firmly believe to be true for me, and I think you would probably agree with me, and a lot of people that struggle with this disorder would agree, that when we are alone, we're outnumbered.
Yes.
I mean, so the fact that Smart Recovery are meetings and they there's a community element to it, I think it's great. I think for someone that's not interested in like the spirituality, and maybe that's a bit of a turnoff. I believe Smart Recovery is more about just psychological behavior modification, and so it works. I mean, people go and it works.
So I see commercials. I can't remember the name of the place, but there's a place in Malibu. Is that kind of what they do? Is Smart Recovery? I can't remember the name. You know what I'm talking about in Malibu?
Yeah, I think it's might be Promises, but
I think that might be what it is.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of money to be made when you say, hey, we have this new way of treating addiction that doesn't involve the 12 steps. Look,
right.
The 12 steps, let's face it, they suck. If you don't want to do them,
right,
and if you're not willing to do them,
right.
Like, who wants to come in and say, I'm powerless? So, do you know, this is the analogy that I give a lot of people. Do you know Blue Apron?
The food thing?
Yeah.
Yes.
So Blue Apron sends you all the ingredients you need, and all you got to do is put it in the mix it together, put it in the oven. So I think 12 steps is like Blue Apron for recovery.
Okay.
There's some essential elements that you could get on your own.
Yeah.
You got to have a community. I got to. I'm sorry. This one guy. Oh God, I'm forgetting his name. But he's done extensive research and he's written a new book on addiction. And his name's Johan. I can't remember his last name. Gosh, but and he says the opposite of addiction is not abstinence, and it's not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection.
Okay.
And that there's all sorts of studies out that prove that the main core issue with addiction is lack of connection.
Okay.
There's a study that in the 90s they did this study, or maybe the early 90s or maybe even 80s, where they put a rat in a cage with water, nicotine, and crack cocaine, and it was like a partnership for the Partnership for Drug-Free America
Yeah, I think I remember
ad.
that.
Yeah, and it was a point that they wwere making was that nicotine is as addictive as crack, because it turns out it was.
Right.
Well, someone redid that study, and they put it was like a rat world. They put 15, 20, 25 different rats in there, and they made it a little rat gymnasium, and they had the wheel, and they had all this stuff that the rats could do, and they put water, nicotine, crack cocaine in right on, I think probably all over this rat playpen, right? And the addiction rates were unbelievably low, right? So what that says is that when the rat is in isolation, their addiction rates go up astronomically. Okay. When they're connecting with other rats, their addiction rates go down significantly. So when you're talking about treating addiction, there has to be a community element. Has to. Now, that's why Smart Recovery, great. Church, great. Celebration Recovery,
yeah,
great. Like that whole, Dharma Punks thing, more of a Buddhist community, great.
Right.
But, there's probably, 200, 300, 400 meetings in the LA area, and right now, if I need that community, I just think that like Blue Apron, that's pretty easy. Yeah. Pick it up, put it in the oven, right? Yeah. Well, I just look on my phone, oh, there's a meeting here, go to it. Yeah. The other thing I think is very, very important in recovery is this acknowledgement of, well, I'll call it the false self. Dr. Berger calls it the addict self.
Okay.
Which is really another version of the false self. This idea that my addiction is like a living, breathing entity within me. That somehow I need to acknowledge that there is a part of me that's really, once I've crossed the line, it's always going to choose drinking or using, mm-hmm, and it's not going to ever want to stop. And that somehow I need to develop a relationship with that part of me. And so that's why when you're in meetings, you hear people say things like, my head tells me, or my addiction tells me, or, and that's, you hear that, and that's a way of separating, right? Separating my essence, who I am in my totality, okay, from my addiction. And I think 12-Step does a great job of that. And I think therapy can do a great job of that. They say you got to name it to tame it. Right? And so this bondage of this addict self, false self, tyrannical self, in some circles they call it king baby. Okay. Right? I'm the king, but I'm a total baby. Okay. I want everybody to do as I say, when I say it, but yet, woe is me, I'm a little baby. Why won't you, do everything I want you to? So it's this egomaniacal aspect of ourselves that I think needs to be looked at. Okay. And therapy does a good job of that, and I think 12 Steps does a really good job because there's this higher power thing. Essentially, what I'm doing is I'm raising my level of consciousness up in a way where I'm seeing that part of me as something I need to treat, okay, something I need to work with, but I don't have to be hooked into it every second of every day. Okay. But I can't ignore it. Right. I can't ignore my addict self, my addiction. So that's another thing I think 12-Step does a really good job of, and I'm sure other communities. I mean, it's a very Buddhist concept too. So I'm sure in a Buddhist setting that would be very much something that would be talked about and addressed. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
2 more questions, and I'll let you be on your way.
Okay.
Why, in your opinion, are treatment centers so expensive?
Well, there's money to be made, so people are going to try to make their money.
Somebody's misery, it seems like to me, but okay, I understand, people have to make money, but they do seem to be extremely costly, and insurance only covers seemingly a small portion.
This is a tough one. I think I'm all in favor of people, creating an income for themselves in a way where they're helping people and helping people get better. There's a blurry line in that arena because I think let's just say I think people have a hard time maintaining their integrity while offering services because there is such a financial benefit to that.
Right.
Ideally, what I like is when you have places that have a lot of scholarships available. Mm-hmm. So say they offer services to the people that can afford it, but they're always siphoning off funds to give 2, 3, 4 scholarships at a time. So people that can't afford it can get in.
That might be something that a lot of people don't know.
I don't know that many people I don't know the inner workings of a lot of facilities. Okay. I know that that's something that some facilities do.
Okay.
I know that some sober livings will do that.
Okay.
But that's, to me, I think, a great model.
Right.
Because that way there are some people that are less fortunate to have the funds available. But it takes more work and effort. But, there's a facility down in Long Beach called Redgate.
Okay.
And Redgate, I believe, is a Medi-Cal approved facility. I have a friend that got sober there, and it's basically covered by Medi-Cal, and it's an inpatient program. And actually, how is it? It's a detox facility, so you can be there for however long you got to detox, and then it turns into, I believe, an IOP program, so it's an intensive outpatient program. So there are options, but I think there's a Claire Foundation I think they're still open. I may remember someone telling me that they closed, but Claire Foundation in Santa Monica or Venice, it's a pro bono place, and so people, if there's a bed open, you jump on. So I know a lot of people that would be maybe having relapse and can't get back in the rooms. They would sit and wait for a bed at Claire and jump into there. So there's ways, but no, it is pretty. I think you have to look at addiction treatment in general, and and like basically our medical system in general is like in the 80s, doctors and physicians and treatment facilities, they said what they needed, and insurance companies just paid. There was no approvals and whatever, and that was optimal. That someone that the professionals could say, this person needs this, they need X amount of time, they need and this is what it costs, and insurance companies say great. But of course, with everything else, it gets abused. So over time, insurance companies say, okay, well, wait a second, we need to now go in, and I'm giving the short story, and I may not be perfect with my description of this. That's for fine. Those that know more than I do, but they come in and say, well, we're not just going to have an open, like a blank check. So so the insurance companies start creating conditions, and it has to be this amount of time, and it can't be this, and then you get healthcare professionals working for insurance companies, making sure that the I's dot and the T's crossed, and then insurance companies get, to me, overblown to where they're looking more to make profits than they are to help people. So nope, that's not approved. It costs too much. Well, what if that's what this person needs? It costs too much, and they'll find some healthcare professional that'll say, no, that doesn't work. That's not what this person needs. And now you got some healthcare professional for an insurance company telling someone what they can and can't have, and what facilities can and can't do, and telling someone what facility they can and can't go to. So. Yeah. I mean, our healthcare system is a complicated mess. So I don't know what the answer is, but perfect world, you tell insurance companies what you need, or the professionals do, and you get it. But we've been, we're like, I don't know, 25 to 35 years away from that. Right. That happened back then.
Okay. All right. Last question. If there is there a difference between abuse and dependency?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So I think, one of the things to think about when it comes to dependency, there's actually a difference between abuse and dependency, and there's a difference between dependency and addiction.
Okay.
So there's a great Vietnam gave us a wonderful look at how this works, right? So, and I'm not exactly perfect on the numbers here. I'm really good at concepts, but remembering exact figures is not my strong suit. But I believe something like 70 to 80% of Vietnam veterans came back from Vietnam dependent on substance
Okay.
dependent. Right?
Okay.
Now, keep in mind, that was a pretty adverse environment.
Right.
And there was a lot of people that were using all sorts of stuff. I mean, barbiturates, heroin, alcohol to deal with that.
Yeah.
So, the U.S. government was worried that there was going to be a catastrophe because all these vets were going to come back and they were just going to remain dependent, and we were going to have addicts left and right. Well, what happened is that they came back, and fast forward 10 years, and that number of 70 to 80% dependent is now down to 10 or 11%.
Okay.
And what is the national average typically for addiction in our country? And it might be worldwide, but for sure I know it's our country. It's about 10 to 11%.
Okay.
So really, there's two components that create addiction. Well, two main components. Okay. Number one is genetics. We now know that if you are set up genetically to get this thing, it's you're playing with fire if you choose to drink or use drugs. We know that.
Right.
But then the other one is environment, right? So when the environment is crazy, if there's a lot of trauma, we now know that so much of addiction is rooted in trauma, physical trauma, sexual trauma, emotional trauma. So those two things are huge factors. Notice I didn't say the chemical hooks in the substances. See, back in the day, we used to think, if Joe Schmo did heroin, he was going to become addicted because heroin is addictive. We now know that's not true. Now, there are addictive hooks in substances.
Right.
But the greater factor is, number one, how your genetics play out, and number two, what the environment is that you're living in. And it goes back to what that Johan guy said, which is, and how connected you are in your environment to yourself, to your community, how transparent you are. Goes back to that identity thing that I talked about. Man, when I developed an identity that was rooted in drinking and partying, I set myself up. Because I don't think I have much genetic addiction stuff in my gene pool, but maybe. So we need to be very careful that we start diagnosing people. I mean, addiction is really best when it's self-diagnosed.
Right.
And,
Right.
And it's like, that's really, now we can, my job as a clinician is to hold up a big fat mirror in front of people and say, look, are you seeing yourself clearly? I want you to see yourself clearly.
Yeah.
But, until someone says, look, I have crossed the line. They say once a pickle, never a cucumber. I am an addict. I am an alcoholic. Until that person comes to that realization, you can create circumstances like, say, if it's a husband and a wife, you can leave your husband, leave your wife. You can fire somebody.
Right.
You can cut someone out of your life. Consequences create situations that then create, let's say, a bottom for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But, we can't make it happen for them. No one could have made it happen for me.
Right.
So the other thing too is that it's really important that when someone comes in and they're drug dependent, that we don't immediately say, "Oh, you're an alcoholic, you're an addict." And I think that that happens a lot.
Okay.
And a lot of times what's happening is that there's an environmental issue, just like Vietnam, and that person is trying to work out their coping skills and how they deal with things in a certain environment. And if they change their environment, that their dependence would not, like a good example. There's a lot of people from pain, they become dependent on opiates,
Right.
and then once they detox, because they haven't crossed the line into addiction, maybe because they don't have the genetics or something like that, they can, after they detox and they get back to a healthier state, they can go back to taking, pain medication as prescribed.
Right.
They can step out of the dependence and get back to taking it as prescribed. Now, I'd say that's rare. Most people that get dependent on opiates, likely they probably should find another way of dealing with their pain. But that can happen because it's more of an environmental thing than an addiction thing.
Okay, you actually opened up a door for one last question.
Yeah, I got time.
Some of you are probably familiar with Nikki Sixx of Motley Crue, and he's an advocate for opioids. Okay, sorry about the pronunciation. Why are opioids so addicting, and why are so many people dying from them? What makes them different from other?
He's an advocate for the awareness of the opioid crisis that we have in our country.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Well, gosh, I think there's a lot of reasons. I think it starts with the fact that, pain in our country has become, let's say, a factor in treatment.
Okay.
More so than me. I mean, look, as a physician, and I'm not a physician, but I was listening to Dr. Drew talk about this on his podcast. So, is that pain needs to be considered, but if it's one of the central factors in treating someone, then there's a tendency to treat pain as though it's bad and terrible and needs to be avoided at all costs.
Okay.
So gosh, just 10, 15 years ago, I'm not exactly sure what the time is that I believe a physician was sued and lost the lawsuit because that physician wouldn't prescribe to a patient that claimed that they were in a certain amount of pain. So once you start, allowing lawsuits to go forth to telling doctors, if you don't treat pain, right, then you can get sued.
Okay.
Well, now physicians are going to be concerned that if someone comes in and says, and no one can know whether someone's telling the truth if they have pain.
Right.
And so now someone comes in and says, I'm in extreme pain. Well, got to give them opiates.
So an opiate is a pain reliever.
Yeah, so opiates are hydrocodone, oxycodone, Dilaudid.
Okay.
They're basically they're derived from opium.
Okay.
And then of course opium turns into morphine, and then opium can turn into morphine. You can turn into heroin.
Okay.
And then Percocets, Vicodins, Norcos, which are like oxycodone, whatever. That's the chemical name.
Okay.
So we're unwinding from that. We are unwinding from a medical system that basically tells doctors that you need to treat pain like you need to treat, like a broken bone.
Right.
And we need to alleviate the issue. And so doctors for a long time have been prescribing opiates. And then what happens is that people get addicted. And then what do? They go back and they get more. And it just becomes and so there's some good awareness going on about this now. I believe there's some extra steps that physicians have to take to prescribe opiates. A lot of times you have to go to a special pharmacy. You can't just go to the corner pharmacy. I'm not quite sure about that, but so that's good. There's more awareness created around it. I think that the cannabis legalization is going to really help out. I know a lot of clients that have. I know one client that was taking like 8 or 9 Norco pills a day, which is hydrocodone, I believe, with a little bit of like Tylenol.
Okay.
And he is like down to like 1 or 2, and at night he just inhales just a little bit of cannabis just for pain relief, and he'll do it again before he goes to bed, and he sleeps like a baby. I mean, so the whole cannabis could really be a replacement therapy because people are dying.
Right.
Left and right, especially in Middle America and Appalachia.
Right.
It's just a huge, huge problem. And you know what? Opiates make you feel warm and fuzzy. Mm-hmm. I remember I broke my collarbone when I was 17 in spring football, and I was so pissed because I wasn't supposed to be tackled. It was like we didn't have pads on. It was spring practice, and I was so mad. And I remember being angry. And then the doctor's like, "Well, they had to inject me with morphine because they had to get my shoulders back so they could create this shoulder splint." And I went into this warm and wonderful place in like 3 seconds.
Yeah.
And so during my addiction, I was obvious. If I had oxys and perks, man, I was popping those things often. So they're very addictive, and for someone that struggles with addiction, they can be something you can't get away from.
Yeah.
But no, I think there's wonderful awareness about it. I think we need to step up the research on cannabis to see how that can be a replacement technology. And we need to start looking at pain as something. Now, I'm not a physician, but this is what physicians are talking about. We need to start looking at pain as something that needs to be dealt with. We also need to look at pain as a signal. And if you look at pain as a signal, then you can use that signal as a way of really dealing with the undercausing issue at hand, rather than looking at pain as something that needs to be squashed and put out completely. Because if we do that, we're just going to keep medicating people
Right.
and creating a lot of this addiction stuff continually.
Right. All right. Thank you very much, Chris.
Doris, you're awesome. You're awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I hope I did okay on the.
I learned so much about you, and I've known you my whole sobriety life and before a little bit. So.
Well, you're awesome. I am so proud of you. Every time I see you, the light bulb shines brighter and brighter and brighter. Doris is awesome. So. Thank you so much. I'm very proud of you, and I'm grateful that you chose me to
Thank you.
be your first guest.
And I will see you later this month.
Yes, you will.
Thank you, listeners, for tuning in for this podcast, episode 1. And remember to leave comments, reach out to me, and listen to this podcast with other people, share it with other people, and thank you again.
And subscribe.
Subscribe, yes. Have a good one. Bye. The editing for my podcast is done by Neil Jackson. So if you're looking for an editor for your podcast, please reach out to Neil Jackson. He's a freelance editor, and he does a fantastic job. Thanks, Neil.